Each June in Madison, Connecticut, the Daniel Hand High School football team begins spring football practice. The 2010 team will mark the 40th season in program history.
Ready, set. Good, step. A little too wide, Trevor. One, let's go. On one, same thing. Zone left on one. Drive left.
All week, head coach Steve Philippone and assistant coaches Mike Ciotti, Don Giles, Dave Mastriani, and Eric Becker will teach fundamentals and begin working towards the team's 10th state championship. On Saturday, each player will get a chance to play in Hand's annual Black versus Gold Spring Scrimmage. Under the watchful eyes of parents and coaches, Hand will look for its next group of stars.
Take it in real quick. Not bad.
But to get the full sense of Hand football, you'll have to leave Hand High and travel to Main Street to Tony's Barbershop. There, they've been cutting hair since 1964 and putting team history on their wall. All 40 teams live on at Tony's, and it's every young player's dream to be the next added to the list.
Madison dabbled in football in the late 60s. But as far as I'm concerned, the story of hand football begins with Larry Ciotti in 1970. Larry Ciotti was a 26-year-old graduate, former captain at Southern Connecticut State University, and he wanted to be a gym teacher and football coach.
Well, it all started in 1969 when I was an assistant football coach at North Haven High School. I had an urge to be a head football coach, so I had applied to about 16 head coaching positions throughout the Northeast. In all 15, I got rejected. So my last interview was at Hand High School, and I was so dejected, so I just went in with a sweater and a pair of slacks. And lucky for me, our athletic director, Bob Duncanson at the time, was dressed in the same garb, so he hired me. So that's how it began in 1970.
With the arrival of Coach Ciotti came an attitude and a mentality that the boys of Madison had never seen before.
Coach Ciotti. It's funny, I certainly wasn't laughing the first time I met him. We were at the surf club, and we were afraid.
I remember meeting him for the first time. He was scary looking. And I'm thinking to myself, what did we get ourselves into, kind of thing.
Number one, in all of Larry Ciotti's practices was just toughness and hitting.
I think they saw football on TV and they probably figured it was an easy thing. And my philosophy was to train them extremely hard.
We had to really learn to be tough, and he came into Madison, and Madison hadn't had football for years, so we were pretty soft.
I think we started out with 52 players and ended up with 34.
We would do a drill not long after it started where there would just be two parallel lines. And the way he would describe it is, I want you to picture that you have a horn coming out of your head, and the only way to adequately take your opponent down is to stick the horn through his throat. So that was our form tackle.
But that was his philosophy. If you guys can deal with, the heat and the hitting, if you can endure that, you can endure anything, and it made the games easy for us.
We learned to be warriors. At that time in life, it's hard to find where you can use your potential, and there you could use everything that you had and more.
During the summer of 1970, construction of Madison's first football field would be complete, thanks to private donations by local philanthropist Harold Strong. The field would be built overlooking the Long Island Sound at the Madison Surf Club and feature lights so the team could play their games on Friday night.
There's some uniqueness and magic about that place.
Back then, 40 years ago, there weren't too many teams that were playing night football games. So that itself offered, another aspect to the circus, night football on the beach.
There's just something about the concentration of energy on the field. Whenever there's all blackness around you, it just really brings so much focus to the field and to your play.
After a JV season in 1970, Hand started its first varsity season in 1971.
That first year was special because it was
our first football for everybody, our first varsity season. We played Mount Everett of Massachusetts. He would have taken us to Oklahoma if he knew that there was a team that we could beat.
I think what he did, which was pretty amazing, is that he started to develop a tradition. I mean, and it sounds crazy, but there was all of a sudden a great deal of pride in terms of playing hand football.
He instilled in us that we could be winners, and every year we got better. The next year 6-3, 7-2, and then 9-0.
Football was something desirable, and it still is for kids in Madison. And for them to be part of hand football, they have to work hard. And it's a desirable thing to put on the black and gold helmet and play on a Friday night.
By 1973, the Tigers were poised for their first undefeated season.
One thing that was great about Larry was that you didn't have to have great athletic skills. If you had heart and you had the will to work, he found it. And that's what I think divides hand from the majority of schools.
After winning 8 straight games in 1973, only a Thanksgiving Day game against rival Morgan High School stood between the Tigers and their first undefeated season.
I always remember going into the locker room, and all of our helmets were all placed nice and neat in front of each one of our lockers. And there was this like funny looking black symbol on the crown of the helmet. So Coach comes in and he just says, "You're probably wondering what that is on your helmets." And he says, "Well, you know, we're going to go over there and we're going to hit Morgan so hard, we're going to leave our mark on them. We're going to hit them so hard that your mark is going to be 9 wins." So it was a backwards 9. And his philosophy was, we're just going to play like we've always played. Not the biggest, not the fastest, not the strongest, but we had the will and we had the belief and the desire, and that's what he instilled in us.
Hand would go on to beat Morgan that day and become the program's first undefeated team. Later, they were honored with a top 5 ranking within the state. Today, the town of Madison is known for being one of the most pristine shoreline towns in Connecticut. But during the mid-70s, things were slightly different.
Back in the mid-70s and late 70s, there were still working farms. And one of Coach Ciotti's famous lines was, "You boys will be running till the cows come home." We hated cows.
In 1974, the Tigers posted a 7-2 overall record. And as football grew, some of the mothers in town needed a little help understanding the rules.
Football was brand new to Madison, and some of these moms wanted to know more about it. So Larry organized the ladies' night. It was actually a clinic where the moms only were invited. He sat down, just explained it from step 1.
In 1976, Connecticut implemented its first championship system for high school football.
Without a doubt, there was a different attitude with our players. They knew we had the opportunity to play for a state championship.
After winning 10 straight games, the Tigers earned the right to play in Connecticut's first Class M state championship against state powerhouse St. Paul's High School of Bristol.
They were the #1 scoring team in the whole state of Connecticut, all the divisions.
Not many people had heard of Hand High School at the time, even though we had been successful. And we just played maybe a perfect game.
We ended up winning the game, 29-0, 29-zip. I don't even think they passed the midfield stripe.
And that really catapulted us into all of these state accolades that we have received then and now.
After winning a state championship, Madison had officially become a football town. Every young athlete dreamed of the day that they would become a Hand Tiger. including one player who would go on to play for Boston College and win a Super Bowl ring with the San Francisco 49ers.
When I was 6 years old and started playing football, going to Hand High and playing in varsity football was my dream. Just like the NFL was my dream after I played at Hand High. But I'll tell you, it was just an amazing experience just to watch the evolution of hand football as a small child and going to the games and seeing everybody stand around the field and be so passionate about a football team. It's up there with any other program in the country, I would guarantee it.
Well, you live this myopic life in Madison where you have this great shoreline, you got the beach, and it's a very affluent town, but you have this pride, this tiger pride that everyone talks about, and it starts as a little kid going to these Friday night games, wanting to be out there. I remember as an probably 6th, 7th, 8th grade watching Kenny Schweitzer play, and one day after the game he gave me his shoes. You know, there's the white shoes, and I was a size 12, he was a size 12, so I got to wear Kenny Schweitzer's shoes in the 8th grade. It meant a lot to me.
Tiger Pride is a religion in this town, I think. Our passion for this town and this sport and the way we play for the town, that's Tiger Pride.
In 1977, the Tigers picked up where they left off.
In 1977, we had 8 seniors, and it was led by Ken Schweitzer, and he led that team.
After 10 more wins, the Tigers would hold the longest winning streak in Connecticut and play in their second consecutive state championship game against Berlin High School.
The only thing I really remember from that game specifically is when Kenny Schweitzer basically ran over my back to win the game.
It was a wake-up call across the state. I think it put us on the map. We had all these wins, but there was questions of whether we could do it against the bigger schools. We did.
Back-to-back, 76, 77 were outstanding years for us.
In 1978, the Tigers would play state powerhouse Xavier High School for the first time.
We went into Xavier. Xavier was undefeated. They were on their way to their first state title game. And we went up there to Palmer Field. They dressed 105 kids, and we just rocked them. So even though we didn't make the state championship game that year, that was just another important game against a big opponent that helped solidify hand football.
In 1979, the Tigers would have their first losing season, but would acquire 2 assistant coaches that would trigger one of the most successful runs in program history. Assistant coach Steve Philippone would coach the running backs.
Coach Philippone was a textbook coach where if you didn't get it right, you would do it over again. Everything was repetitive.
I fumbled a couple times, and I'll tell you what, I'd be on that field in the dark with the lights on, and he'd be throwing the ball each way. Go get it, jump on the ball, Jimmy Bell, jump on the ball. You're not going to fumble ever again. And I'm like, no.
Assistant coach Steve Sekula would coach the linemen.
Sekula was the battery to the engine.
He was very tough on his players, but he was the first to embrace a lineman. Linemen don't get a lot of accolades when they're out there. They kind of work as a unit. But he would have his hat turned backwards, and he'd be jumping up and down when the lineman make a great block or hold a block long enough to let the running back be the superstar.
In 1980 and 1981, the Tigers would battle back and return to the state championship game, but fall short both years to the score of 14-7. In 1982, the Tigers would return a young and talented football team and return to the state championship game for the 3rd straight year.
I remember that season, first play every game was a pitch to Jimmy Bell.
And everybody knew it too, but they couldn't stop it because our line was awesome. I had a 169-pound lineman that blocked better than some linemen I played with in college because they believed, even though they had a small body, they could still play like they're 300 pounds.
Well, 1982, again, we had some tremendous talent. And so we had a great year in 82, and we beat East Hartford in the state championship.
If you work hard, you dedicate yourself, and you play with passion, and you believe, those are the keys to life and the keys to playing football.
The next year, for the first time, there would be two Seibs on the football field.
Mike Seib, I played for hand football 1983, 4, and 5. I was born in 1967. Football program was started in 1970. I was 3 years old when my dad started it. Well, it was pretty wild. Everything in my house was hand football this, hand football that, and I bought into that hook, line, and sinker, and it was a big part of my upbringing, obviously. I would go to all the scrimmages and the games and ride on the bus with the team, and my dad's expectations of me, I don't think he offered me to go to Xavier when I was going into my freshman year. He said, Mike, why don't you take the test to go to Xavier? I'm like, why are you asking me that question, Dad? He's like, well, I just want to make sure that you know there's options out there and you don't have to go to hand. I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. I'm going to be a hand Tiger.
In 1983, the Tigers returned many of their starters from the 1982 state championship team.
Going into the 83 season, we were preseason, ranked number 1 in the state preseason.
I think that one year we had more scholarship money offered to a team than anyone in the history of the state of Connecticut.
We had kids like Jim Bell and Scott Schweitzer, and then the linemen that we had, they all one went to Virginia, Craig Thornberry, Mark Murphy went to UConn, Joe Hughes went to Harvard. They were a tremendous senior class.
As the season progressed, the Tigers remained perfect.
Strong field the parking lot couldn't hold enough cars. Everyone came to see this team that had potential to make history.
We played for them, we played for our town, and we believed we could win every game. I mean, I enjoyed high school football more than I enjoyed the NFL, college football, just because of the magnitude of the town. We gave everything we had for the fans.
Hand would go into the state championship game, heavily favored over East Catholic High School, but surprisingly, find themselves down late in the fourth quarter.
It was a very close game. It was snowing in that game, and there's just something in the air that just wasn't right.
And then the last series of the game, our quarterback, Dave Thompson, threw the ball to Scott Schweitzer. Scott made a one-handed catch in the end zone, pulled it down for seemingly the winning touchdown, and there was a flag on the play, a holding call, and that play was called back, and that was just about the end of the game.
It certainly molds you that you can be beat in anything you do in life, and it's okay as long as you try your hardest, and that's what this program did. It made you try your hardest. You left nothing behind.
I walk out of my office every day knowing I gave it all I had, no matter what happens. And I can come back, and you always got the next day to be better. And that's what Seib taught us, how to be better every day. And I've been around a lot of coaches, Holmgren, Jack McNell, and Seib, and Philippone, and Sakula. Those guys are probably as good, or not, if not better. I'd probably say better, because they're great coaches, and they teach you about life.
That evening on the way home in the bus, I remember saying to Coach Seib that, the junior class, my class, we would come together and win it the following year. And he reminded me of that come preseason camp the next year.
In 1984, the Tigers would return a talented but untested football team.
Well, in '84, we still had remnants of the outstanding talent of the '83 team, and they were pretty upset that we had lost in that championship game.
Coach Sakula, in his own special way, would dangle the silver medal necklaces that we were given in 1983 for being runners-up. He would dangle them over us while we're doing bench press and squats. He'd hang them from the squat rack, and so that would be the physical reminder that we just weren't good enough the year before to win, and that truly motivated us.
For the 5th straight year, the Tigers would return to the state championship, but this time the game would be played in legendary Yale Bowl.
Yeah, we were able to get our game to be the only game in the Yale Bowl, and it was just a fascinating place to step foot in, and it was a great day for the Tigers.
We ended up playing Wilton didn't have a chance to see them much during the season. It was basically a 2-week prep time, and then you just went out there and put it on the line.
After 3 quarters, the game was tied, 7-7.
Here again, we were struggling, and at the very last series of the game, I had said to Dave Thompson, our quarterback, I said, well, we want to make sure we don't lose the ball, and we've got to be ready for overtime. And he looked at me and said, Coach, there's not going to be an overtime. And I said, wow, that's the kind of spirit he had and the kind of competitive spirit that we needed at the time. So Tim Nye was a 6'4.5" tight end. And he had played tight end the entire game. In that last play that when we needed, I had split him out. We split the tight end out. And surprisingly, a 5'6" cornerback went out to defend Tim. And we had Tim run a post pattern. And it was a little bit of a wind that day in the bowl. And Tim ran the post pattern, got open. And with his height, and Dave Thompson threw the ball on a rope. And he made a catch in the end zone for the touchdown. And we had won the game, so that was a great year, great finish. Unbelievable.
I guess you couldn't write it any better than that. For me, it was outstanding. And see, that right there just epitomizes hand football. And if that play still can be talked about, you know that people believe in hand football.
At the end of the game, after we won the state championship in 1984, Coach Sekula was wearing the silver medals, and on the field during the celebration, someone cut the silver medal necklace off of his neck and replaced it with a gold medal, and it was, the crowd went crazy. It was a really cool moment in hand football history.
The next year, in 1985, Mike Ciotti would graduate and go on to play football at Yale University. In 1986 and 1987, the Tigers would post a combined record of 8-11-2. In 1988, Coach Ciotti would announce his retirement. 2 years later, he would become an assistant coach at Yale University.
What has it meant to me? That's a very, very good question. The program means to me now probably more than it meant to me 10 years ago, and probably even that much more than it meant to me 20 years ago. When I think about Larry Ciotti, I really do believe he was one of the most influential men in my life. I think that I had gotten as much education on the football field with Larry than I had gotten in any higher education that I've ever received.
And I'll never forget when he talked to me, and from that point on, it changed my life. He pulled me aside and he said, Jim Bell, you can go high as the sky. And now I have a Super Bowl ring because of it.
I absolutely cherish every moment I've ever spent with my dad, playing under him especially. Play for a legendary high school football coach is something that everybody in this world would want to do, whether it's my dad or somebody else. Especially as I look back on it now, 25 years later, I wouldn't have changed anything else. I wouldn't want to play for anybody else in this world but my father. And I hope someday that my kids will grow up and they'll be able to play for their dad too.
In 1989, assistant coach Steve Philippone would take over as head coach.
That is half of football that you can be proud of.
What is most apparent about Coach Philippone is his unbelievable passion.
His speeches would raise the hair on the back of your neck.
The great team, the team that will be great, the one that's going to go the distance, is going to come out and score 27 points on him in the third and fourth quarter.
he would get you going.
He, to me, was the classic motivator. I would still, probably to this day, if he called me up on the phone, I would still run through a wall for Coach Filippone.
There's a tremendous responsibility in my mind to continue the tradition. Remember, Larry took this program from nothing and got it to a state champion in less than a decade. I inherited that, and I really understood how much work went into doing it.
In 1989, Han would return one of its smallest teams with just 26 players.
The thing that hurt the most was the guy at the register said, "The glory days of hand football are gone forever."
Han would respond by winning 9 regular season games and advancing to play Darien High School in the program's 8th state championship game.
Again, I don't even know how they played that game that night, or I don't know how we played that game that night. It was snowing, it was sleeting, it was awful weather.
Jim Devine and I lead the team out, and I see players that have played in years past and, won state championships. And, it impresses upon you what this game means to the team and the town of Madison.
Han would score 28 unanswered points in the first half and go on to win the program's 5th state championship game in Coach Filippone's first year.
The joy of winning a state championship is just a culmination of so much hard work by so many people.
The emotion for me was euphoria. It was just so special. We made that statement that hand football is still here, the right man is in place, and this is where it's going to stay.
The reality is we needed to put something on the field that our people, our town could be proud of. That's what I've always been concerned about. When our guys take the field on a Friday night and there's 1,000 people there to watch them and the band and everything else, I want people to walk out of the stadium going, I'm proud of those kids.
You're going to test your gut today, and you're going to come out winners. But you got to make it happen every snap. 48 minutes of a war, of fighting on a football field, of being a few people who are willing to take the chance, who are willing to stick it on the line and do it. Now, because you took that challenge, you got to make it happen. This is going to be a test of pride, and this is going to be a test of will. Who's paid the higher price to be here?
In 1990 and 1991, Han would post records of 8-2 and 6-5.
Pick it up a little bit, all right? Pick it up a little bit. Play as a team, we're gonna win. I want to go to states. Let's go. We got every little kid in Madison watching you play. Somebody's looking at you every play. Don't let them down. Pick your heads up and be great football players and be great examples. Let's go.
Although they would miss the postseason, a sacred hand tradition would be born, involving the locker room that lives on till this day.
What we would do is we would have our music on and everything, and then there'd be a certain time somebody was responsible for putting Eye of the Tiger in. And this was when everything got very serious. And I can't describe it because everybody was on the same page at that moment. Once that music came on, we were all on the same page, and then the radio was shut off, and then Coach Phil and the other coaches would come down to the locker room. We'd all have our spot. We had a specific spot that we sat in on the benches, and then Coach would give us the speech.
All the things that matter are right here. All those other things out there are great. All those people, they're great. But what really matters is just right here. Right here. This is what you play football for.
And then right after that, we'd exit the locker room and we'd take the trip around the building, and then we'd board the bus and you could hear a pin drop going to Strong Field, an absolute pin drop.
It was a great atmosphere because it was kind of two different worlds. You go out for pregame, so there was no one around during the pregame. It was just kind of you in the stadium. Then you went back in the room. And then when you came back out, this was essentially our Friday Night Lights.
Every time you see an opposing team get off the bus for the first time down there, if you go down and watch pregame warm-ups, or if you're playing and you see your opponents get off the bus, they step off and they stop and they just look around. You got the ocean crashing right next to you. You got that breeze ripping off, especially later on in the fall. And there's nothing else like it in the state.
Magical, legendary. It's something you dream dream about when you're part of the youth football program. Again, it brings goosebumps just thinking about the players that played before you on that field, the success that teams had on that field. And it's something that when you're a player playing on a strong field, you don't want to lose because you don't want to let down those that came before you.
When those lights went on, I really did believe that anything was possible. I felt like I was in some kind of dream world. You step on that field and the grass is groomed and the lines are white, and you know that this game in your life at that time means everything.
You would just get that chill. I mean, even talking about it, I get that chill. You would walk out, you would walk under, like I said, you walk under the stadium, and that was almost like going through a tunnel. You felt like you were playing in front of 50,000 people where there was just nowhere to be seen. It was just people all around. I mean, it was great.
To Chris Torres, who breaks a tackle, breaks another one, and goes to the 10-yard line. First down.
In 1992, Hand would fall to the number 1 and number 3 team by less than a touchdown and post an 8-2 overall record.
Down, handed off this time to Eric Hamill, and he spins into the end zone. Touchdown, Daniel Hand.
In 1993, junior running back Eric Hamill and captain Mike Burrell would both rush for over 1,000 yards, thanks to outstanding line play, led by assistant coach Steve Sekula.
Oh, Sekula.
Boy, I don't know if words do Coach Sekula justice.
There was a point in time where Coach Sekula actually came onto the field and told the defense
what play
we're going to run. Basically, his philosophy was, if you run this play perfectly, it cannot be stopped.
I'm not sure when it started, but I know when we would win, on the way out of the stadium, the first stop sign we'd stop at, and Coach Sekula would take a tiger paw, beat out the door, up against the sign, go clap, and the bus would go wacky, crazy, And there's now the kids, I guess, carried on the bus with them, and I have no idea where they got the one they carry on the bus.
Coach Sekula could take a 5'8", 175-pound kid and make him into a state champion guard.
We were doing this 3-back pass, and we were doing it time and time again. I don't have the best hands. Coach Sekula picked up a folding chair that was in the gym, and he goes, if you don't catch this pass this time, I'm going to hit you with this chair. So I was like, oh, good God.
And none of the crazy stuff he did was without a lesson.
As much responsible for your pain as he was responsible for, he was an individual that you wanted his respect.
There's not a kid that ever played for Steve that wouldn't run through a brick wall for him today, 20 years later. And that's a testament to the kind of man he is and the kind of approach he took.
You could just tell that he lived and breathed, coaching football.
A lot of people didn't get him, but if you were one of his linemen, you got it, and you knew that he was there for you. He was a great coach for his linemen.
Coach Sekula has a fond place in my heart. He gave me my opportunity to play as a sophomore because he saw something in me that I don't think a lot of people did. And Coach Sekula has the innate ability, I think, to get the most talent out of a kid. He got me, or any player for that matter, to get the most out of their body and to do things that you never thought were possible. And I forever thank Coach Sekula for giving me those intangibles that I take with me every single day of my life.
In 1993, the Tigers would post a 9-0-1 record and return to the state championship game, but fall short to New Canaan High School. Although the Tigers would fall short of their goal, just 7 seniors would graduate, and in 1994, the Tigers would run the table and return for the second straight year to the state championship game.
Again, as I told you 3 weeks ago, this has been a great run for this team. It's really 2 years, really. When you consider that we're only a few seniors last year, it's really 2 years that you guys have been making this run. And this is it. We talked about it before. There might be one more. No more. This is it. When you walk around the edge here, you ain't ever gonna walk that way again. You guys, never. Last walk. And you think about it as you walk by that field last time, and you know when you come back tonight, it's gonna be your last walk back. And that's it. And that's a great thing. Something you can be proud of. You have accomplished so much already. Before we go on the field today, I want all you seniors, I have some things to say to you. Between you and me. But when you walk on that field, you guys, it's the last time. The last time this family, this group right here will be together. And let's make it the best time that it's ever been.
This is Kent Sprague with Frank Tordorf. The Class M State Championship game played at Southern Connecticut State University. So hand will receive and we're ready to go. It's a low kick, hit and bounce, and it's going to be picked up by Guinapero.
We played Ferran in the state championship game. Both teams undefeated, but they had no business sharing the same field as us. They were just not a program as storied as we were. And we were up 17-7 at halftime. Thought we had this locked up, thought we were going to finally get our gold medal. And Ferran in the second half just came out on fire, and they just picked away at our lead. I think we were eventually winning 24-20 with about a minute and a half left to go in the game. We had a 4th down and 1. All we needed to do was get the first down. We hand off the ball, get about 5 yards, flag on the field, 5-yard penalty, have to punt, and the rest is history. They drove down the field and scored with about 30 seconds left to go in the game. We lost 27-24, and to be honest with you, still just eats at my gut.
That was the final score with final score 4-28, and Daniel Hand 24.
To achieve greatness, you have to be okay with failure.
Winning is certainly important. It's in our fiber. It's in the fiber of this program, but it's not everything. What's everything is that bond, those relationships you forge with the guys that you play with, and those relationships you take with you to the grave.
If anyone goes through a career with Coach Philippone in hand, and they go out and they live their lives, I think they can always look back and think, at one point in my life, at one moment in my life, I was part of something very, very, very special. And I don't think everyone could say that. And you know it's special because of the feeling you get when you think about the memories that you made on that field. And to think at one point in your life that you're part of something so much bigger than yourself is very empowering. And it's something that makes me happy.
Although the 1994 Hand team would fall short in both championship games, as a class would post a record of 27-4-1. And without knowing, plant a seed that would one day blossom into one of the program's greatest achievements. In 1995, Hand would begin their second season playing as one of the smallest teams in the Southern Connecticut Conference. In 1996, a young, talented, and hungry football team would post a 7-3-1 record, setting the stage for a highly anticipated 1997 season.
We had high expectations for ourselves. I remember the coach was trying to break us, and we just refused to lie down and quit.
Hand would begin the season ranked number 7, and in week 1, defeat number 5, West Haven High School.
Our team was a bunch of smart guys. Because of that, they were self-motivated. They didn't need someone to be barking in their face telling them how to get better. They wanted to be better.
Behind a strong offensive line, team captains Dan Anderson and Greg Walby would set single-season school records for rushing yards and receiving touchdowns.
Anderson was so unique. Fast, quick, and he made sure that when you tackled him, he hurt you.
Chased about 3 more.
Walby was just so talented. When he lined up against someone, he knew he was better than them, and they knew that he was better than them.
Robert's looking to throw. He's looking long, and there's his man down there. Craig Walby. He's coming to the left side. He goes.
He's got him for a touchdown. That's Walby. That's a touchdown.
We all grew up together. The brotherhood that was there and sort of the loyalty to each other was incredible. We weren't the biggest, we weren't the strongest, we weren't the fastest, but we had at all times 11 guys on the field that come together.
After defeating Fairfield, Amity, and third-ranked Hamden, the Tigers would take on the Cheshire Rams, the state's #1 team.
Cheshire just didn't lose. Cheshire. I mean, they were Cheshire.
They were always one of the best teams, you know, no matter what age group in the state. Coming into that year, we knew ahead of time Cheshire was going to be one of our top teams.
After 5 consecutive Class L state championships, Cheshire would face Hand, looking for their 50th win.
I remember the bus ride up to Cheshire and going through Durham and taking the back roads. There were signs out there, "Go Hand, beat Cheshire." This was outside of Madison. Just incredible.
Welcome everybody, Daniel Hand Tiger football. We're at the McClary Stadium in Cheshire for one of the games of the season, as has been highly touted by the media throughout the state.
That atmosphere for that game was very similar to a state championship game.
Tiger pride means lining up on a football field and the guy in front of you is supposed to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, and you go out and kick his butt. Even though on paper you may not be as good as he is, but you know, hey, I'm not going to let this guy, he's not going to take me tonight. That's Tiger pride.
Hand would score 2 early touchdowns and find themselves with the ball with less than a minute until the half.
The biggest play in that game was the last play before the half. Roberts sprinted left and hit Walby on a fly pattern.
He's looking long, far.
And then I remember we came out in the second half and we just absolutely physically dominated that Cheshire's football team.
Big games, big plays, big players. Like Hand Scott Roberts, who threw Tiger-seeking missiles, completing 9 of 11 for 138 yards and 3 scores. Then there was Hand's Dan Anderson, bouncing off bodies like he was exerting his own gravitational pull. Anderson rushed for 147 yards, and this fourth quarter score as Hand, with its ball control offense, took command on its way to a 28-14 win.
I don't know if it can get better than this. To beat the #1 team in the state on their field where they haven't lost in probably 6 or 7 years. I don't know how long it's been, but it's been a long time. It's a great tribute to our kids.
Again, the final last night, 28-14 Hand, and no, I'll tell you what, these Tigers look like they have the look of a team that's built for the long haul. You could call it the eye of the Tiger.
After the game, and Coach Sekula takes the Gatorade and hangs his arm out the window on the side of the bus, and a direct quote, I think he goes, "Officially declare this field 49-1," and shakes the Gatorade out.
Hand's big win would put an end to Cheshire's historic winning streak and push the Tigers to the #1 spot. And after 5 more wins, Hand would play Newtown High School in their first Class L playoff game.
To understand the Hand running game, think of linemen with speed, like Jeff Monroe, who pounded the Newtown defense for 99 yards tonight, 11 coming on his touchdown dash to open the scoring early. Then there was Dan Anderson, the senior fullback who runs like half a collision, searching for the other half and usually finding it. The 12-yard bull rush here late in the first led to his 24-yard score early in the second. Anderson had 55 yards on a 62-yard Tigers drive and advances to the Class L final with a 31-6 win.
It's been a long season, and we got one more game to go, and we got to keep focused.
You guys are just one win away from finishing what you started about 12 weeks ago?
Oh my God. It's like, wow.
I think that says it all. Again, the final, Hand 31, Newtown 6, and Noah, the top-ranked Tigers handling opponents and all the attention of being #1 the same way impressively. Back to you.
All right, Dennis. What an answer there from Jeff Monroe. Let me ask you, you said this is one of the best teams you've seen in this area in a long time.
I'd say again, as I said earlier this year, the best team I've seen in 15 years since Jerry McDougal's team. I think it was 1985 when they won the state championship.
For the first time in program history, the Tigers would take a trip to the Class L state championship game. But for the seniors, this would not be their first championship game. 4 years earlier, as freshmen, the team would line the locker room walls of the 1994 state championship game and watch as the team would fall short to Foreign High School.
The first thing you take away from that game is the silence in the locker room after the game. Witnessing it up close, you just didn't ever want to experience that again.
We didn't expect them to lose. I don't think anybody did, but it was a shock. It was a feeling that we knew at that time, we don't want to experience this. It was just motivation for us to work even harder. And I can't remember who it was on our team, but afterwards we all got together and they said, listen, remember this feeling.
On December 9th, 1997, Hand would face Staples High School of Westport in the championship game.
They were just like us.
Yeah, we knew that the conference they played in was pretty legit. They were almost an identical team to us, except they wore blue.
Going into that week, we were all a little tense because, this was the big stage. This is what we played for all season. This is what we worked for growing up. This was our moment.
The coaches normally would give speeches before a game, get us fired up. Coach Phil, like I said before, is great with that. But there were a lot of times also where, we got together as a team and the captains, people like Greg, people like Dan, they gave us speeches too.
Although Coach Ciotti had started a football program nearly 3 decades earlier, under Coach Philippone, the program would be turning into something about much more than just football.
It's the last time I get to stand up in front of you guys and talk to you guys, and I'm kind of nervous, but I just don't know what to say, but Coach said it. He said, you play for the people who are in this room. Now you think about what everybody went through in this room. You think about TJ, who you play for, who spends the whole season away from his family and his dad drives hours to come up and see the game. You think about Brian and Hunter, who made a sacrifice at the beginning of the season. They went away from their friends to be with you because you're their brothers. You think about this season, because no football season will ever go by without the people in Madison talking about you guys. You select few. Your band of brothers. No season will ever go by without them thinking about you and what special thing you guys have done. Win or lose, I'm so proud of you guys, I can't say it in words. This is the last time we're together, and let's make it the best time. It's all about us and our brotherhood, and nobody's gonna take that from us. Right there. Nobody! Not them, not anybody. Nobody ever has this season, and nobody ever will. Because you got me, and I got you. And that's what it's about. Now bring it in here. Stop, boys. It's time to unleash us, boys. It's time to unleash us. Brothers on through. 1, 2, 3, brothers!
Hand would score first and take a 14-0 lead into the half.
Let's go, baby! Everything you got! Let's go, boys. 24 more minutes. I want to take you back for a minute to September 9th, halftime. Coach Philippone says, we're going to win this football game, and we're going to start climbing that mountain one game at a time, every week, and we're going to get to the top of it, and we're going to be winners. 24 minutes of your blood and your sweat and your tears and everything you have, and we will have climbed to the top of the highest mountain a high school athlete can ever aspire to climb to. You can do it! We'll do it! Brothers, all of us, 1,
have 12 seconds left in the game. And so obviously Staples is going to try to go long here. Zach Seib is putting pressure on the quarterback. Now he turns loose a long one. And it's caught by a hand. As Latimer makes a catch down there. Interception. Bubba Latimer brings it in as the clock runs out. Hand wins their 6th state championship game by beating Staples 14-7.
This year. How do you enjoy this one? We will. We'll enjoy this one for a long time. We're very, very happy. It's the greatest thing that a high school athlete can aspire to. Our kids did it, and we're very, very, very proud of it. Thanks very much.
Hand's 1997 championship team would finish the season with a perfect 13-0 record and be the program's first team to finish the season ranked number 1 in the state. But within the town of Madison, they would not be the only championship team.
At the time, our youth program was splitting our kids into 2 teams. It was a decision that they made, which I thought was a great decision, because it would allow more kids to play, and development is key at that level. But I do recall that the 2 finalists were the 2 Madison teams. And I remember going to that game and saying, oh my goodness, these are 2 great football teams, and they're all ours.
Our tradition at Hand, I always think of building a fire in a fireplace. And when you build a fire, you need the draft to go up the chimney. You need the smoke to go up the chimney. And once the draft is created, the smoke pulls itself up the chimney. And that's how it is in hand football. We have such a powerful tradition that almost feeds itself.
I don't have a son yet. I have two daughters, and it's killing me that I don't have the lineage yet to feed the high school football program. So I'm working on that boy, because that's part of the reason why I moved back to this town, because I want my son to play at Hand High School.
You know, Hand wins because of the buy-in from when you're young. It was being bred to play football for Hand High School, and when you get that kind of buy-in and that belief in one program from such a young age, when you actually get it, when you actually get the chance to step on that field, you take advantage of the moment and you give everything you can to live up to the Hand name. I mean, the biggest thing about football is belief. When you buy in like that, which Hand players do, that's when you win. That's when the wins come. And that's why Hand is so special.
I honestly think, and I've always said, that the product we get in Madison, the kid we get, is just as good as it can be anywhere. And they have a great backing, both from the community and their families. So we get a great product. That's number 1. Number 2, the community is tremendously supportive. I think when you put all that together with 2 decent coaches like Larry and I, to run it and to try to keep it going straight, I think you're bound to have success.
In 2001, wide receiver coach Pete Nye would help transition the Tigers' run-first, ball-control offense into a balanced attack. In 2002, Hand's brotherhood would welcome its largest group of biological brothers, including Coach Philippone's sons, Tommy and Kevin. And in 2003, Hand would field one of its largest teams in program history. A lot of people don't realize that the sophomores, juniors, and seniors on that 2003 team were the same kids in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade playing in those Madison Youth Championships back in 1997.
Watching the 97 team growing up, I think all kids at the time who were a few years older, a few years younger than me, growing up, that's what you wanted to be.
From that point on, we did see a large growth for youth football. And another thing that Coach Sekula added way back when, he said, just make sure they can hit. And no doubt, that crew that started in 97, they love to hit.
Hand's powerful defense and solid offensive line would help senior quarterback and captain Mark Punzelt and senior running back Dave Randolph to combine for well over 2,000 rushing yards.
We had great leaders, and we had a strong foundation. We had a lot of guys who understood what it meant to play football at hand. And not only that, I think we had great underclassmen. It was incredible. And like I said, there were just some games watching Punzelt just run down the field or gun it down, and it just, I just got goosebumps. I still do just watching them play.
And they come in this side, okay? And that's Punzelt again, and he may make it all the way, and he does.
Mark Punzelt was the most amazing combination of speed, power, and throwing ability that I've ever seen. He was quite simply the best player on the field.
Hand would post an 8-2 record, playing as one of the smallest teams in the SEC, and qualify for the Class M semifinal game against Pomperog High School.
I don't think they're ready for what they were getting themselves into. We ended up just killing them. It was a break from the SEC, it really was.
After defeating Pomperog, Hand would face Ledyard and compete for the program's 7th state championship.
Ledyard was a tough team. Ledyard was a team we had seen in the scrimmage.
Billy Mignol's the coach at Ledyard, and I remember Steve Sekula saying to me before the game, don't think they're going to do what they did in the scrimmage. Well, Ledyard came out and did exactly what they did in the scrimmage, and Mark had a tremendous day, and we won the game easily, and it was tremendous. And that was Steve Sekula's last game. He had announced that he was going to retire, and I remember saying to one of the kids, if there was to be a dousing, it would be Coach Sekula, who got doused. So with about a minute left in the game, the Gatorade bucket went over his head, and it was a great thing.
In 2004, Hand would return many of its starters and begin the season ranked number 2 in the state.
Going into our senior year, I knew we had a lot coming back, and we knew we had an opportunity to do something special.
It was definitely a different standpoint. We were the big guns.
Those guys, they were just vicious, and those kids wanted to knock your head off every chance they got.
After defeating Xavier High School in Week 1, Hand would demolish their next 11 opponents by averaging over 30 points per game, as senior quarterback Ryan Fodor and receiver Jim Eckenrode would perfect Coach Pete Nye's passing attack.
Coach Nye, he is the reason for Hand being that, toss, trap, power team to being that, we can ram it down your throats, but also we'll toss the ball for 200, 300 yards on you in a game and beat you that way.
Jim and I have been good friends since we were probably in 8th grade, and we just kind of built a rapport. It was one of those things where you could almost go out there and close your eyes and throw the ball to a spot knowing he would be there because we had worked at it so much.
On defense, Hand would hold their opponents to an average of just 7 points per game.
Anything less than what we did the previous year was going to be considered a failure. So when we were put on the field, we flew around the ball, getting tackled, and to be a Hand player, you do it as a team.
Expectations were extremely high, but we wanted to be pushed, and we wanted to be the best.
In Week 12, Hand would face Brookfield High School in the state championship game and defeat them to the score of 35-6.
The good thing about that team was, even though we were winning by such high margins, we never were comfortable until we won the state championship. We knew what was at the end, and luckily we got enough help on state championship night to catapult us to the #1 ranking by the end of the season.
Hand would become just the second team in program history to finish the season ranked #1 in the state. In 2005, Hand would be poised for a three-peat, as Coach Philippone's youngest son, Kevin, would become a senior.
I think we were closer just because, he grew up with an interest in our class. His son was a part of our class. To us, he was just like, he was Coach Phil. We'd always call him Coach, but he was just our best friend's dad.
As the season would progress, Hand's defense would maintain their hard-nosed reputation, and Hand's offense, led by Captain Tommy Lee, would average over 30 points for the second straight year.
Honestly, a lot of people were questioning what our team could do senior year because we lost so many talented players, but I think we proved something to ourselves and everyone else that we were the real deal still.
In 2005, the goal was to complete the three-peat. Anything less was going to be a disappointment.
Well, I couldn't have this conversation and not say that team was #1, the one consistent component, because players from that group of kids competed in every one of those championship games. In addition to that, they were so committed to proving to everyone out there that we were good football players, and we got there by hard work and doing things the right way. And we, made it to the playoffs, and ironically ended up playing another SCC team, Hillhouse, in the state championship game, who was a tremendous football team. And honestly, I thought my coaching career would be over that day.
In 2005, we were 8-2. We played Windham in the semifinal game and destroyed them, and then advanced to play a really talented, undefeated Hillhouse team.
Good evening for Madison Public Television and Daniel Hand High School Tiger football.
Well, the state championship game is the game I'll never forget. I just remember the bus ride there. It was like an eerie silence almost.
That's pitched to Lee, wide. Lee cuts it back. Lee in the end zone, touchdown. Mr. Lee, Mr. Lee.
That day, a lot of people thought that it would be Coach Philippone's last game. And there was no way that our team was going to let this opportunity go by and send him out with anything less than a win.
It really kicked in. I remember being in the locker room before the game, and it really kicked in. Like, this is the last time I'll be here with all these guys. And you hear the term brothers, this and that. I remember that really thinking that was one time, these guys are my brothers. And these guys are who I want to go to war with every day when I go on that field.
And that's Lee with the ball. Lee takes it in. Touchdown Hand.
No one had a bad game that game, which was a real special for us.
There was the idea of winning a state championship, but there was so much more as well.
Takes a knee, and that'll be the last play of this game. The final score is going to be 34-0.
And I remember talking to the guys after the game and saying, that you proved to everybody that the tradition that's Hand High School and the work that's Hand High School and the way we do things at Hand High School will always come out on the positive side.
It was surreal, man. Three-peat. I have 3 rings. Not too many people can say that.
Ever since we started playing football, expectations were extremely high. And to be able to deliver on those expectations and accomplish your goal, with a group of guys who you've been playing football with since the 4th grade, it's one of the best feelings in the world.
If I had to say one thing, I hope it's that no kid that ever played for Hand High School could walk away from our field and say he never turned his back on a fellow player, and that he learned that his limits are boundless. In other words, that whatever he wants to accomplish, that if he applies enough hard work and he throws enough energy at it, that anything can be done.
In 2006, Mike Ciotti would become an assistant coach for the Tigers. In 2007, Hand would win 11 games and return to the state championship game, but fall short to New Canaan High School. In 2008 and 2009, Hand would combine for a 12-9 record, leading into Hand's 40th season in 2010.
You'll go a lot of places. You'll have your own families. You'll have wives and kids, and you'll be doing your own thing with that. But I suppose what I'd like to say to you all is this: is that no matter where you go, no matter what you do, I can guarantee you that outside of those few people you gather around you, who are your family, who do love you, no one will ever love you any more than I have. I mean it. No one. And if ever you need any of us, we are only that far away. Because this is a family. This is what football is about. This is different.